Have you ever felt the weight of a number you can no longer reach? In the dim-lit alleys of your memory, a number is lurking. It was the first one you saw, the price of that home 3 years ago, or the peak of your portfolio before the red ink bled across the screen. It claimed the territory of fairness in your mind. Now, every other figure is just a shadow dancing around that original ghost. You tell yourself you're being rational, weighing the pros and cons of the current market. But you're not looking at the world as it is. You're looking at a tombstone of what was. The brain is a lazy detective. It takes the first piece of evidence it finds and closes the folder, content with a lie over the labor of a new truth. This is the anchoring effect, a psychological gravity that keeps you tethered to a reality that has already expired. While the world moves, you stay frozen, waiting for a ghost to come back to life. The first number is a trap, not a map. It is a hitchhiker that grabbed the steering wheel while you were looking at the rearview mirror. To judge today's value by yesterday's price is to go blind by choice. Why does your brain trust the first stranger it meets in a dark alley? Inside your skull, there's a detective bureau that never sleeps, but it's chronically underfunded and exhausted. This is your prefrontal cortex, the weary investigator trying to make sense of a chaotic market. But the detective doesn't work alone. He relies on a series of informants, your neural heuristics, and one of them is a liar. When you see a price, let's say a stock at $150, that number isn't just data. It's a chemical event. Your brain, seeking to conserve precious glucose, looks for a shortcut. It doesn't want to calculate the intrinsic value, the cash flow, or the geopolitical risk. It wants a baseline. It wants an anchor. Enter the informant. Dopamine. When that first number hits the screen, it creates a reward prediction baseline. Your neurons fire, mapping out the territory. The detective scribbles $150 at the top of the notepad in thick charcoal ink. He doesn't know if it's true. He just knows it was first. Now, the scene changes. The market shifts. The stock drops to $120. To a rational observer, this is a new set of data. But to your internal detective, this is a personal insult. He looks at the notepad. $150 is still there, written in permanent marker. Compared to the anchor, $120 feels like a steal. Or, if you bought at $150 and it's now $110, the anchor makes the loss feel like a physical wound. Your brain isn't calculating value. It's calculating distance. The biological machinery here is called adjustment and anchoring. Your basal ganglia, the primitive, instinctual part of the office, clings to the initial number because letting go requires cognitive effort. To overwrite that $150, the detective has to burn energy he doesn't have. It's easier to stay anchored to a sinking ship than to swim to a new one. This is the crooked informant at work. He whispers that the first number is the only number that matters. He ignores the new evidence, the changing winds, and the crumbling foundations. He makes you believe that because something was expensive, it is now cheap. He masks the reality that the anchor isn't a life buoy. It's a weight. The mind would rather be wrong with a reference point than be right in a vacuum. In the noir city of your psyche, uncertainty is the enemy. The anchor provides a false sense of security. It gives the detective a place to stand, even if the floor is rotting away. You aren't trading stocks or buying assets. You are trading against the memory of a number that no longer exists. The brain chooses the comfort of a familiar lie over the exhaustion of a new truth. Can you afford to be right about a world that no longer exists? In the rain-slicked streets of the marketplace, your impressions are the fog. They roll in, thick and gray, blurring the line between what is happening and what you wish was happening. The Stoics called these initial thoughts phantasiae, the raw, unrefined images that hit your mind like a punch to the gut. An anchor is just a persistent fantasia. It's a ghost that refuses to stop haunting the house. To survive the storm, you need a weapon. Not a shield to hide behind, but a blade to cut with. Epictetus taught that while we cannot control the numbers on the ticker, we have absolute sovereignty over how we use those numbers. This is the power of prohairesis, your reasoned choice. It is the ability to look at a price and say, you are just an impression, and not at all the thing you appear to be. Imagine the anchor as a heavy, rusted chain connecting your wallet to a sunken ship. Every time you check the market, you feel the tug. You wait for the ship to rise, but the ocean doesn't care about your entry price. The Stoic response isn't to pull harder, it's to cut the chain. Logic is the scalpel that separates what was from what is. In neuroscience, we call this cognitive reframing. You are retraining the prefrontal detective to ignore the crooked informant. Instead of asking, why isn't the price $150 anymore, you ask, if I walked into this room today with zero history and a pocket full of cash, would I pay $120 for this? If the answer is no, then holding on isn't patience, it's a delusion. You are practicing what the Stoics called phantasia catalepticae, an objective representation. You strip the number of its emotional baggage. You see the price not as a loss or a discount relative to the past, but as a cold, hard fact of the present. The anchor only has power if you agree to hold the rope. The Stoic knife is the practice of daily detachment. You must kill your darlings. You must be willing to let the version of yourself that bought at the peak die, so the version of yourself that survives the valley can breathe. When you cut the anchor, you don't fall. You finally become mobile. You stop being a victim of the first number and start being the architect of the next move. The past is a fixed point, but your mind is a fluid force. Do not let the stone drown the water. What remains of your judgment when you finally stop looking at where you've been? The city is quiet now. The screaming tickers, the neon sale signs, and the ghost of the first number have faded into the gray mist outside. You have entered the inner sanctuary, the space between the data and your reaction. In this room, there is no yesterday. There is only the utility of the coin in your hand and the clarity of the breath in your lungs. The Stoics called this prosoche, a state of continuous, rigorous attention. It is the practice of being a gatekeeper to your own mind. When a price flashes before you, the gatekeeper doesn't ask, is this higher or lower than before? He asks, is this true? Is this useful? Does this serve the person I am becoming? Value is not a memory. It is a present tense decision. Neuroscience suggests that we can actually reset our baselines. By consciously focusing on the current utility of an asset rather than its historical cost, you are dampening the firing of the amygdala, the part of the brain that screams loss when the anchor is pulled. You are moving the decision-making process back to the prefrontal cortex, the architect. You are no longer the detective chasing a cold case. You are the builder, standing on a fresh plot of land. Every moment is a sunk cost. The money spent is gone. The price paid is a phantom. All that exists is the capital you have left and the wisdom you have gained. Wealth is not found in the numbers you remember, but in the clarity of the choices you make right now. Treat every financial decision as if it were your first, and you will never be a slave to your last. The anchor has been cut. The water is deep. But you are finally light enough to swim. The sanctuary is always open. But it requires you to leave your ghosts at the door. If you seek to rebuild your mind as the ultimate fortress against the chaos of the market, join us. Subscribe and step into the Order of the Stoic Wallet. Together, we will stop reacting to the shadows and start architecting the light.